Of the July 20th, 2023 Board of Commissioners meeting to order at 6:39 p.m. Thank you for everyone's patience while we took up things in other committees prior to this. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Commissioners Cavell? Cavell? Okay, come back. Gershenson? Here. Gingell? Here. Hoffman? Present. Jackson? Here. Johnson? Joliet? Here. Long? Here. Lubes? Here. Markham? Here. McGilvray? Miller? Nelson? Here. Powell? Here. Rahman? Present. Smith Charles? Spiz?
Present.
Weipert?
Here.
Woodward? Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, if you can record that McGilvray, Smith Charles, and Miller have given notice. They would not be here tonight. The invocation this evening will be led by the Honorable Christine Long, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everyone can please rise for Commissioner Long.
Good evening. Let us pray. God of wisdom and truth, as this county commission gathers to deliberate and decide on matters so important to the present and future well-being of the Oakland County, bless and guide its members through the grace of your Spirit. Help them each to set aside petty concerns that together they might best serve the common good of Oakland County residents and honor the purpose for which they were elected. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Long. Next up, we got approval of the minutes dated January 15th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Moved by Commissioner Gingell, seconded by Commissioner Jackson. Any discussion on the June 15th minutes? See none. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Let the record reflect that the minutes have been approved. Next up, we need a motion to approve the agenda. And there's been a request. I know there's been a lot of attention on the adoption of a contract for an SRO with Notre Dame, and the request has been to move that item, the Notre Dame contract, to the regular agenda so that all commissioners can vote. So can I get a motion to move the agenda reflecting that? Moved by Commissioner Spiz, seconded by Commissioner Markham. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Let the record reflect that the agenda has been approved, pending that small change. Next up, we have a presentation, and this is where we really kick off our one of the most important responsibilities of this board is that an adoption of a budget, and it begins with the presentation of a budget recommendation from our own county executive. Let's give a round of applause to Oakland County Executive Dave Coulter. Welcome back home.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you. It is so good to be back here. Good evening, everybody. I'm happy to be here tonight to do what I do every year at this time, which is to share my administration's proposed 3-year rolling budget in what will be a year of transition, and we'll talk a little bit more about what I mean by that. But as I've also shared before, it's just great to be back here in the Commissioner's Auditorium. I'm filled with a lot of good memories of being here. Many of you still are here, and I applaud you for all those years of public service. And, you know, maybe I'm a little bit of a budget geek because I was on the Finance Committee when I was here, but this is an active and busy time for the board. I get excited about budget season, and I hope you do as well, because it really is, as the chair just said, I think the most important responsibility that we work on together. So that's why I come here in person. That's why I wear a tie, which I haven't had on in a couple of months, just to impress all of you. And I also have to say that I've always appreciated, both as a county commissioner and now as the county executive, the collaborative and bipartisan way that we have worked on this budget together. So I hope that that is still the case this year. Certainly, we will have disagreements, and that is just a natural part of politics. But I know that we all share the same fundamental goals, right? To spend the money of the residents of Oakland County that they've entrusted to us in a prudent and transparent way, so that we can provide the vital services that our residents and our cities and our businesses and our organizations need. And I know, because I know all of you, how seriously we all take that. Now, one thing you're going to notice about this budget is that after 3 years of the critical COVID dollars that we got, both first from the CARES Act and then from American Rescue Plan dollars, we're coming to an end to those dollars. I know you know that, but this budget is going to be really reflective of that, and I want that to be in back of our mind as we talk about this. Now, make no mistake, those funds were absolutely critical in my mind to providing essential services to our residents, and giving them the tools that they needed to survive and ultimately thrive after the pandemic. I know it's not 100% over, but after not only a public health crisis, but an economic crisis in our county as well. And I like to believe that we've spent those dollars as well as we possibly could have. And I don't want to compare us to other counties, but I will. I think we did a really satisfactory job for our residents, and I thank all of you for all your work in doing that. Together we made some really strategic investments, and I want to start by talking about that, just to remind us that even though that money's going away, and we did it pretty quickly in the scheme of things, I just want to remind us some of the things, not all of them, but some of the things that I think really stand out. And again, with bipartisan collaboration, which I really appreciate, I think we've done some amazing things. So I just want to share a few of those just to kind of, set what we've done. I like to start with Oakland 80. It's near and dear to my heart, and it has helped thousands of our residents across the county get the education and the training that they need on their journey to a successful career, which is so critical, especially in a county like Oakland County. And we're making real progress towards what originally I thought was an audacious goal of 80%, especially since we started at 61%. 80% of our adults having some kind of a degree or recognized credential by 2030. But as I think you heard earlier this year, in our first 2 years, we've gone from 61% to 69%. And it encourages me that if we continue to invest in this work until 2030, I'm more and more confident that we can get to 80%. And that will set Oakland County apart from other counties in Michigan. Oakland Thrive is something else I think we can all be proud of. A group of 16 coaches and business consultants in the communities helping small businesses stabilize and economically recover from COVID. And they've connected just this year with 2,300 small businesses. This team is out hustling. And even more impressive, they have a goal this year of doubling that number. I don't know how they're going to do that. The leadership there is confident that they can. But I think it's a really impressive statistic, but more importantly, an impressive service that we have provided to stabilize our small businesses in Oakland County. Together, we've addressed the crisis of mental health in our county. We've invested $40 million in programs that are expanding and improving access to mental health services across the county, and significantly, with a special emphasis on our students who were so hard hit during COVID and continue to be. We're delivering on what I know is our shared goal of improving programs to serve our older adults when we gave out 29 grants to community centers across our county, all over the county, so that they could expand the important work they're doing to keep our seniors thriving as well. We've put a premium on environmental sustainability on the county campus through clean water, energy efficiency, conservation programs, but also, in addition, funding the North Oakland Sanitary Sewer Project and investing $15 million into improving and expanding our county's amazing parks system. It's a major it's a major gift to our parks that will be a legacy for generations to come, in my opinion. We've also made significant progress on another shared goal of ours by hiring a pair of seasoned pros, Khadijah Walker-Fobbs, who is here, raise your hand, Khadijah, and Kyle Hines, who are going to lead our effort to get more affordable housing to our residents across the county in a variety of ways, and I think maybe the most important of which is our new Housing Trust Fund, which I think is going to make a significant contribution to getting our goals. And then finally, I want to mention Project Diamond. I know you've heard a lot about it, but Project Diamond, which has already supplied 250 of the 3D printers to our small manufacturers. They initially used those printers to make critical PPE that was so necessary in the early parts of the pandemic. But more importantly, it transitioned them to understand the possibilities of a 3D printer. And now that they've become more nimble and more flexible in their production lines, they're making parts more quickly at much lower cost without having to depend on all the disruption in the global supply chain. We've also now instituted phase 2 of Project Diamond. And just to remind you, our goal now is to get 40% of our small manufacturing companies with a 3D printer. They think that is sort of the tipping point that will really make it catch fire. I guess the idea is that the other 60% now are going to clamor for it when they understand that these other 40% have a competitive advantage. And I must say that I think that program is going to make us a leader in the country in making sure that small manufacturers have what they need to succeed in Industry 4.0. So it's a lot to be proud of. There's more examples than that, but I just wanted to take a moment to say we should all be proud of the way that we have, I think, responsibly spent the dollars that were entrusted in our care by the federal government to equip our businesses, our communities, our families, our people with what they needed to get through that pandemic. And we have gotten through the pandemic. Now, as you know, we're not quite done, and as I know you know, we're working with you all and your leadership on the remaining $80 million of the ARP dollars to make further investments in all of these critical areas that we've identified. But after that work is done, however, I do have to emphasize again, we're going to be entering a new phase where we don't have those funds anymore, and we're going to have to be a little bit more creative and financially smart to find ways to continue programs that have demonstrated their value, discontinue programs that have run the course of their usefulness. One instance of that, one example of that I will give you is around, and it's similar to the Automation Alley model that we used in the county about 20 years ago, but we're transitioning the Business Forward team to the nonprofit Oakland Thrive organization, which is now in downtown Pontiac, so that they can sustain going forward after ARP without county dollars. And I think it's critical that program in particular has really demonstrated its value, and if we can get businesses and memberships to support that organization, similar to Automation Alley, I think that can continue for years to come. But also keep in mind that the budget that I'm giving you tonight, the 3-year budget, ends in 2026 now, because here we are already in 2023. But that corresponds with the same year, 2026, that our ARP dollars need to be fully expended. So in this 3-year budget, it's the end of those dollars. Everything has to be spent. So because of that, the budget that I am recommending to you tonight is going to be lean and disciplined. We have to get back to where we were pre-COVID dollars, frankly. So this budget, once again, is structurally balanced with no planned use of budget surplus for ongoing operations. That is the new world that we created 4 years ago and that we will continue to live in going forward. And that's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity for us to do things better. We're also looking out for our current and future employees with a 3% pay increase, which I think is justified, and especially in this market. Our goal is to retain and attract people to want to work in Oakland County and do good things for our residents. And we have to do that in a competitive environment. So I think that's critical that we do that. And so in that vein, this budget also achieves another one of our strategic goals, which is operational excellence. And by that I mean all the contracts with our employees currently have been renegotiated. Thank you, April Lynch, although she's not here now. Most of them through the end of 2025. So we are in a good place with that. We have budget certainty around those contracts, which should make things a little smoother as we go into this next phase. Now, as you know, I support employees' ability to use collective bargaining to ensure fair compensation and benefits, and this budget follows through on that commitment. But we've also asked, and I want you to understand this as you go through your committee meetings, we've also asked all departments to offset the cost of any new employees or programs with cuts elsewhere in their budget. We just simply don't have the funds to be adding additional programs or employees without looking for those costs in their budget, and that's going to be challenging, I know, but it's critical in the lean budget that we're entering into. But we've done that with one clear goal. Well, there's a lot of clear goals, but this one I want to make sure you understand, and I'm glad you put the picture up there, because this money will hopefully free us up to begin slowly to tackle the frankly daunting challenge of our capital improvement program. We cannot kick that can down the road any longer. You all know how expensive that is, and we have to start finding the money to begin the capital improvement program. On that score, I guess I would just say, and I'm sure you all know this, but we're considering purchasing property in Pontiac. Thanks, by the way, to an incredibly generous $50 million appropriation from Lansing. So thank your state reps when you see them, because that was a game changer. And if this project does go forward, because right now we're still in our due diligence phase and we're exploring all the ways to make this possible, and we're going to make sure that we have our ducks in a row and our finances in order to do it, even with the $50 million. But if it goes forward, not only will it be, I believe, a transformational game changer for downtown Pontiac and a catalyst for more development there, but it allows us to close older, less efficient, and costlier county buildings. So we should be able to reap long-term savings from this as well. Now, as you're going to hear in the coming weeks during the budget hearings, our departments are also always looking for ways to improve the services that we provide to our customers. We've committed to delivering measurable results to you and to the public, centered around our 8 strategic goals. As I've often said, the proof is in the data, and that's what we're using. I've been hearing from all of our departments, the phenomenal work that our employees have already started to do in the more than 20 OakStat meetings that I have personally been part of, where department heads have met with me and my senior leadership team. Each department reports to me, and they participated, and they're telling some really cool stories. So again, I just want to give you a flavor of what we're starting to hear. I invite you during these budget hearings to ask about their KPIs, ask about how they're trying to streamline services and reduce costs in their areas. But I want to share with you just a few, because this work is really starting to become impressive. By tracking the number of employee injuries, risk management now requires fundamental workplace safety training for all new employees. We weren't doing that. And we've begun to target training and communications around safety with the goal of reducing workplace injuries. And I'm happy to tell you, workplace injuries are now down from 308 in 2019 to 192 last year. In addition to obviously being a benefit to those employees, it saves the county money in both medical costs and time away from their jobs, which hurts productivity. These are real dollar savings. Our emergency management department, they've seen the number of county residents who are using our Oak Alert system and sign up for Oak Alert increase to 16,000 people. much higher than when we started. And they're well on their way to their goal of 19,000 people. This obviously helps keep our residents informed when weather or other disaster alerts happen. I don't know about you, but I got an alert about an hour and a half ago. If you're not signed up for Oak Alert, I would encourage you to do it. They don't overwhelm you. It's only when really bad things are happening that you need to be aware of. It's a really important communications tool. And then finally, I'll give you an example over at the medical examiner's office. You know, they have a goal now, because we're doing KPIs, of responding to a death investigation within 1 hour of getting the call 80% of the time. That's their goal, 1 hour, 80% of the time. In past years, they reached that goal 4% of the time. So because we have that data, we looked at it, they looked at it, and with one small change, as it turns out, allowing the on-call investigator to take a county car and equipment home at night, they're now reaching their goal 41% of the time, and they're getting closer every month to their goal of 80%. These are real, tangible productivity gains that we're getting through these KPIs. And again, I encourage you, as you have your meetings, to ask about them, because this is the power that data can provide in improving services. We can cut or we can increase our productivity, and this is that part of that equation. So as I hope you can see, Oakland County, I believe, I'm confident in saying, is operating effectively and efficiently with a determination to always move forward for our communities. You may have heard that before, but it's true. And the county is also bouncing back, as I think you know, after the major disruption in the pandemic. Unemployment rates continue to go down. We think that we'll get to pre-pandemic levels by early 2025, which is a great sign and ahead of some other counties around us that I won't mention. Inflation is finally cooling off. That seems to be a good sign. But this budget keeps us on solid footing to deal with any economic downturn, because we know those are always possible. So we want to be prepared for any economic downturn, and Kyle's going to tell you how that does that. And it includes keeping us well above our shared fund balance targets. So we're not going to sacrifice that for service. I also can't talk about the future without giving a shout out to our Oakland County voters. If you're out there listening, thank you, because they approved the Oakland Transit Millage last year, which kickstarted our efforts for many decades, our dream really of realizing a comprehensive county-wide transit system for everybody. And with the quick action of the board, I can't thank you guys enough, contracts now with NODA and WODA and OPC were approved earlier this year. And the good news is all three have begun to expand services that they're providing, and they have a ridership that's already increased somewhere between 10 and 15% as a result of the increased fleets and operation hours. So we're already seeing the benefit of that there. SMART is about to install 500 new bus stops for their fixed bus routes, 500 additional places that people in this county can get to, and that's going to start as soon as September, we believe. And then finally, in the southwest corner of Oakland County, we're working with People's Express, and we're working on that contract now, and we expect to have that one wrapped up shortly. So then we will have coverage everywhere, and I thank you all for your help in doing that. And, you know, businesses are taking notice of what we're doing here. They've taken notice of programs like Oakland 80 because they need a skilled workforce, and the services of Oakland Thrive. They understand the benefit of that. And I'm proud to say, I've said this before, but I just want to reiterate that 40 new significant companies, mostly in the advanced technology sector, frankly, have decided to locate or expand here in Oakland County just in the last year. And this includes the big guys like One Next Energy, you know, Fanuc Robotics, Magna Seating, Explio USA, people who are hiring lots of folks at really good wages. So I think it's working. And as a seal of approval, if you will, organizations are spreading the good work about what we're doing. Business leaders of Michigan, for instance, just recently highlighted Oakland 80 as an example of how innovative government programs are enriching the lives of their businesses and their residents. Look, I believe this budget not only offers a sound fiscal discipline to the work that we do, but it builds on the important programs and services that are equally important, I believe, to maintaining our top AAA bond rating, which we all know is so important to our future plans, especially as we're going to have to bond for some of our capital needs. The rating agencies have taken notice, not just of our fiscal discipline, but of the issues that we're leaning in on that are forward-looking, and they've told us, yeah, we want you to make those kinds of investments. I'm grateful to continue this good work with all of you and starting this conversation, fielding the questions that I'm sure you'll have. I don't know why you just don't take the budget and pass it, because it's so good. But I was a commissioner, and I understand that it is your primary role to ask questions, and I know you always ask great questions, and that you will continue to do that. But I think you're going to find this is a true spending plan for the funds that we're entrusted with that's both realistic and lays that foundation for our future success. So I look forward to reaching what I hope will be a bipartisan budget with all of you, and that will continue to provide what we have come to experience here, which is simply excellent, effective, and equitable service for all those who call Oakland County home. So thank you for giving me a few minutes to tee up what will be a more thoughtful and detailed presentation, which is Kyle Jen. Kyle Jen needs no introduction, but I want you to give him a big round of applause, because not only does he have to navigate the budget every year, but then we were all the COVID dollars that had to be accounted. Well, you know, my mission to him was, we're not going to misspend one nickel of these dollars, and they're not going to take one nickel of it back from us either. So he's had to oversee that. Workday, you may have heard of that. His group oversees that. So, and he's done it all without getting a lot more gray hair. So I appreciate him, and I hope you do too. So give it up for Kyle Chen.
Thank you, County Executive Coulter. That's a very nice introduction. So if everyone wants to turn to page 1 of the budget book, we can go through. I'm just kidding. But I know you are interested in just a few numbers today, so I have a few to bring to you. So starting on the revenue side. So, you know, inflation, as we all know, is the indicator we've all been watching, both because it affects our personal budgets and because it affects the county budget, both in terms of revenues and expenditures. This chart, you can see the spike up over 8% last year, and then, you know, economists have us projected to come down to 4% by the end of this calendar year, and then hopefully back into the 2 to 3% range. So we continue to monitor that, but we're headed in the right direction. As a summary, in terms of our property tax outlook, and I'll show you some of the charts behind this, very strong taxable value growth for 2023 at 7.5%. 3 reasons for that. You know, under Proposal A, those taxable values are capped. You know, we're at the maximum of 5%. For 2023 because of how high inflation was last year. You know, the housing market has slowed, but sales prices have held up. They're not growing as fast as they were over the last few years, but we haven't seen a significant decline in prices. And you know, there's been a high level of new construction, and we're starting to see that tail off in terms of building permits. But it did contribute to our growth this past year. So that brings our revenue estimates up from the estimates that last year's budget were based on by $4 million for this year and about $9 million in future years. So good news there. As we go forward, we're certainly not going to assume that those trends can continue indefinitely. So we're using cautious assumptions as inflation comes down, as sales price growth flattens out, and as building permits decline. And then we're also incorporating projected Headley rollbacks. We don't have a Headley rollback for the current year because of that inflation number, but we do expect those to continue going forward. So in visual form, this is a history on growth in property values over the last almost 30 years since Proposal A. The light green bars are state equalized value, which is the assessed value of your house, and the orange bars are the taxable value. So you can see that over the last 10 years, taxable value growth is less than assessed value growth because of that proposal A cap. But you can also see that last orange bar, which is the 7.5%, is the strongest growth we've had in about 20 years. Putting that in the long-term history in terms of the revenue side, the green bar is our general property tax revenue before you adjust for inflation. So we are now back above the peak, of 2007, 2008, prior to the Great Recession. It's been slower growth because of that cap on growth. But when you adjust for inflation with the blue line, you can see we're still about 25% below that peak. And here's our county general operating millage rate. When Proposal A took effect in 1994, the millage rate was almost 4.5. For the current year, there is no Headley rollback. You can see that one flat section there at 3.9686. And then as we project forward, we're projecting that the rate will drop to almost 3.8 by the end of the 5-year period. So, total general fund revenues, we're projecting $534 million in general fund revenue for fiscal year 2024. The majority of that, which is the blue slice, is property tax revenue. We're also anticipating some significant state funding increases from revenue sharing at 5%, as well as additional dollars from the Convention Facility Development Fund and marijuana tax. So that's more good news, but also good news that we can't expect to continue, in future years necessarily. So overall, for fiscal year 2024, very healthy revenue growth of 5.7%, with projections then to fall back into the 2.5% to 3% range beyond that. So good news on the revenue side, and now we turn to the expenditure side. So in terms of our approach to the budget, again, this is my favorite slide. I don't think it's probably anyone else's favorite slide in the room, but just to emphasize the importance of structural budget balance. That quote up top is from the Government Finance Officers Association, which is the national association that my staff and I belong to just emphasize this is a national best practice, that with your help, we've been able to achieve in our current budget and are going to maintain going forward, that our ongoing expenditures for the operations of the county will not exceed our ongoing revenues. We're not using fund balance or planning to use fund balance to support those ongoing expenses. So this is the high-level 5-year plan that comes with this budget. So the first column of numbers is the budget that was adopted by you for the current fiscal year, where ongoing revenues and ongoing expenditures were equal to each other. And then the second column of numbers is the budget we're presenting to you for fiscal year 2024, with $531.6 million in ongoing revenues and $531.4 million in ongoing expenditures, and then just a small amount of one-time expenditures I'll talk about in a moment from fund balance. That's our only use of fund balance, or for things that are clearly one-time in nature. As we go forward, if you look at that gray bar for fiscal years 25, 26, and 27, very small surpluses there. We'll talk about some of the costs that we're making sure we build in there. And then fiscal year 2028, you'll notice there's a much larger number there, almost $30 million in structural surplus. That's because the retiree health care bonds that we've been paying debt service on for the last 20 years, the final payment is in fiscal year 2027. So that'll open up significant operating space, and we'll talk a little more about that in a few slides. So our one-time expenditures that are built in, the large portion of that is $2.5 million for the one-time costs of IT development projects. The largest projects that we're anticipating for the upcoming year are for the prosecutor's office, for a new case management system, because they're still entirely paper-based right now, and a new evidence management system, which is needed just because of the explosion of digital evidence that's out there. And then a small amount for for some smaller equipment purchases as well. So those projects will come back before you for approval, on an individual basis as they're fully ready to go. But the dollars are reserved here. So our general fund balance, you can see a 10-year history here. We ended fiscal year 2022 last September with a balance of $220.8 million. You're going to note that is a decline from $288.4 million the previous year. There are two reasons for that. So it's a little misleading. One is the appropriations that you approved to settle the Raffaelli and other property tax forfeiture cases were about $42 million. And those light gray bars, in past years were the dollars that we had worked with you to clearly, reserve for those potential settlements. So that was not a surprise and something we had planned for. And then there's a little bit of a wonky accounting thing that our cash investments, as interest rates went up, those cash investments lose market value, and the accounting standards say that as you close your books, you have to recognize a loss on paper, as if you were selling them, but of course we're not selling them. So that was a paper loss of $24 million, but because the treasurer will hold those investments to maturity, those dollars will be recouped over the next couple years and be back in the fund balance. So overall, even with those changes, our fund balance still is at a very healthy level compared to most local governments at over 40% of our ongoing general fund budget, which compares to our 30% target level in our fund balance policy. So to break that $220.8 million down, this slide shows the assignment of that fund balance that the board has approved. The two key things here are that under the fund balance policy that we've worked with you to put in place, that $125.5 million, about halfway down, that's our rainy day fund. It's equal to 25% of our annual budget. And under our fund balance policy, we're not going to touch that under any circumstance, unless there is an economic downturn that causes our revenues to fall significantly. So that's clearly protected. Once you account for other adjustments there, at the bottom, the discretionary portion that could be used for a future one-time investment that would have to have clear long-term return on investment is much more limited at $32 million. All right, so here's our total proposed budget for fiscal year 2024 at $534 million. The pie chart there looks a lot like the pie chart from previous years. Personnel expenses continue to be our largest category of expenses at almost 2/3 of the total. And you're going to see there is significant growth in our expenditures for fiscal year 2024 at 5.6% before we level back out. And you're going to see on the next slide that a lot of those expenses are around, ensuring we have a competitive workforce and other commitments we've made to our employees. So these are the major increases in the budget. I would note these are not increases in positions. These are not increases in programs. That's the discipline that the county executive was talking about. We have an increase of $6.9 million to fund that 3% cost of living adjustment for employees. We have $2.3 million reserved for the additional costs that will result from the recent arbitrator award for compensation for our command officers in the sheriff's office. We have an $8.8 million increase in fringe benefit costs. There are three factors there. One is something that I think all large organizations across the country are facing, which is that there was a slowdown in the utilization of medical services during COVID, and we're seeing that bounce back as we come out of COVID. Second, there had been some use of excess funds that had built up in our fringe benefit fund and had been noted by our auditors, which we are now reducing reliance on. And third, our retirement system, which is still very well funded. It has been just over 100% for the last 10 years or so, dipped down because of market losses last year to 99%. So there's a small contribution that's required there into the pension system. The last piece is in our internal service fund area. The building and liability insurance fund is the fund that we use to pay for our insurance policies across the county and to pay out any smaller or more routine legal claims. The actuary has told us that we need to increase how much is going into that fund. Unfortunately, there's been a past practice of putting dollars in that fund at the end of the year, and as part of making sure that our spending plan is realistic up front, we're building those funds in upfront. And I should mention that our risk management department is actively working with departments and elected officials to do as much as we can, to reduce those liabilities and potential claims. So all of those factors, are why we've taken a very lean approach in terms of new positions or programs. All right, so other things that are on the horizon as we look out, into years 2, 3, 4, 5 of this fiscal plan. Going forward, we're assuming 2% annual cost of living increases. We'll certainly evaluate that based on what happens with inflation, what happens with the labor market, and what's available in terms of revenue, but that's our assumption going forward. Our outside consultants are telling us to assume 7% annual healthcare cost increases. We are working very closely and monitoring those healthcare costs and looking for areas where we can be more efficient and hopefully reduce that growth going forward. And then there are negotiated increases in some of our collective bargaining agreements, including increases in retirement contributions for sheriff personnel that are built in. We also have a category of costs that kind of emerged during COVID. As you may be aware, prior to COVID, our jail population was a lot higher, and there were a number of inmates at the jail who qualified, to be out doing work on the county campus. As our jail population has come down, which is a good thing, it's also created some costs. So right now we're using federal ARPA funds to pay about $1.8 million a year for laundry service at the jail, as well as about $700,000 a year for cleaning service at the animal shelter, which has been converted to county positions. So we'll certainly continue to monitor that situation and look for opportunities to be efficient there. But for now, we want to make sure we're building in the fact that those costs are going to have to transition to general fund going forward. All right, so some of the additional budget pressures that aren't incorporated, but that we're monitoring closely and want to make sure you're aware of as well. I talked about the retirement system earlier. We have dropped below 100%. There's a small contribution this year. The way the retirement system works, investment gains and investment losses get phased in over 5 years. So we're going to watch very closely in terms of where the numbers come out this upcoming year, which will depend in part, on how investment returns are in the current year. But it is possible that retirement contribution will go up in future years. Child court funding, is a key topic. I think that folks are looking at in Lansing, and a key date that's ahead is that there's a sunset on courts' abilities to impose court costs on criminal defendants next May. So that's something we're watching closely as those court costs represent several $1 million a year to the county in revenue. The Child Care Fund, which is the fund where we account for the costs of caring for and treating delinquent and neglected children, including those who are housed at Children's Village. Those costs came down and resulted in significant general fund savings to the county during COVID, and we're starting to see those trend back up. So we're working very closely with Children's Village and with the Circuit Court to make sure we've got those costs in hand. The state does pick up 50% of most of those costs. IT, is always going to be a cost pressure in terms of the number of development projects that are out there. We continue to work with the Circuit Court on what the right path is for a new case management system for them. Legal risks, I think you're all aware that the county has been served several lawsuits by individuals who have had their convictions reversed. Still very early in that process, so we can't speak to specific funding liabilities, but Corporation Counsel is closely engaged on that matter. And then lastly, as County Executive Coulter mentioned, facilities. So I think everyone has seen these numbers, so just a quick refresher. The outside assessment that we had completed of all of our potential facility spending brought back a number of over $850 million. This slide breaks down that sort of eye-popping number. About 300 million of that would be for new facilities that departments or elected officials are interested in, which would be a discretionary matter. And then $550 million of it is needs related to our existing facilities that we will need to tackle in some form over the next 10 years. And you can see how that $550 million breaks down on the right-hand side over three time periods. We know this is a problem that wasn't created overnight, and it's a problem that's going to take some time to address, and we're going to be as strategic as possible. So, our view in terms of how to address this, this budget does have some smaller adjustments related to facility spending. We're increasing the amount going in for more routine maintenance projects from $4 million to $6 million per year, as well as adding $2 million for smaller non-capitalized maintenance projects. So the difference there is fixing fixing cracks in a parking lot versus replacing a parking lot. And then, to address these larger numbers, at some point, there will have to be bonds issued, and we are actively exploring what those options are. We're also going to make sure that any debt service payments that we start to incur fit within a structurally balanced budget. And as I mentioned earlier, fiscal year 2028, there really is a good cliff in terms of our spending dropping off because of that retiree healthcare debt being retired. So that will represent a specific opportunity to tackle more of this. So as I wrap up, in terms of the ways that we continue to work with you to make sure we're as prepared as possible for changes in economic conditions, as we've talked about, inflation is coming down, the housing market is starting to cool off with higher mortgage rate, and the risk of a recession seems to be coming down, but there's still a risk of a recession. There's always a risk of a recession. So to review the things we're working together with you on to be prepared, we're using prudent assumptions and revenue estimates so we don't overestimate our revenues and create a problem that way. We're ensuring that our structurally balanced budget is in place so that we don't overspend our ongoing revenues. We've spent ARPA funds on one-time things that don't create long-term commitments for the regular county budget. We continue to instruct all departments and elected officials to be prepared that at some point in the future there could be additional reductions needed. And then lastly, the fund balance policy that we talked about that clearly establishes and protects our rainy day fund. And then lastly, I am going to show you one page out of the budget book, just one out of about 500, as a sneak preview, as I hope you'll all dive into, if not all 500 pages, maybe the first 50. This slide here is a summary of our overall budget. So we've focused on that first column of numbers, which is our general fund budget of $534 million. But this table shows you, how much each department is responsible to manage from all categories of funds, special revenue funds, which is grants, proprietary funds, which is, which are funds used to serve outside or internal customers. So all told, departments are responsible to manage almost $1.5 million in authorized spending, which you may think, I thought our budget was $1 billion. So just to explain the math, internal service funds are sort of a double count because it's a fund that a department, that a central department uses to provide services to another department. So we back those numbers back out, and then you can see in the very bottom right-hand corner, that gets us to our total recommended budget for fiscal year 2024 of $1.066 billion. And with that, I will hand things back to the county executive to wrap us up.
And if you think that last slide made your eyes glaze over, every week in a FORT meeting, we get multiple spreadsheets, so consider yourself lucky. So I just want to wrap up by saying, well, first of all, I want to say this. I acknowledge Kyle and love the work that he does. Thank you, Kyle. Because he makes me and all of us look good when we go out and talk to our residents with confidence that we have good fiscal practices. But a lot of folks make this work, and I know there's a number of people from my group that are here. So if you're here on my staff, would you just stand up for a second so they can say hi? All of you, stand up, please. It's a team effort. And then I'm not going to name them all, but there is one person I'm going to name, mostly because she's going to hate that I'm going to do this. But this is my 5th budget that I presented to you, and in each of those, at my right hand has been my chief deputy, who's had her fingerprints in more of this than you know, in ways that you probably don't know. But I'm incredibly grateful on this 4-year ride for my chief deputy, Hillary Chambers. So would you just give it up for her? Thank you. So I'm going to just wrap it up. 4 main things I want you to sort of take away as you go into those meetings and you start to dig into this budget. Number 1, ARPA's made a real difference in what we've been able to do for the last few years, and now we're going to have to begin to find innovative ways to either continue those programs, figure out how to offload them, figure out what to do, because they had to be sustainable, and we're going to look for ways through grants and other ways to sustain the ones that we are passionate about, but that's done. These, as I said before, these recommendations continue our policy of no planned use of fund balance, so that it is a true spending plan, but while also ensuring competitive wages. We can't ignore our employees and what it takes to keep and get good help, and that's important. It's a thoughtful and restrained budget with a focus on freeing up resources to address those sizable facility needs. So if you find an extra pot of money in there that we didn't see, remember, just put it aside in the facility fund. And then finally, I just want to say to you that we hold ourselves accountable to you and the public by measuring, so that when you ask, how is that doing, we actually have data that we can show you. So that's what we've been up to in the budget world for the last year. I look forward to working with all of you and with our team on the budget to get it adopted by the end of September. So thanks again for letting me be here tonight. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Executive. And that presentation that had a lot of information, even more information in your happy evening reading in this. And then for those who are watching at home and those in the audience, this really begins the formal budget process that this board will undertake. Hours of budget hearings, going to the nitty-gritty, line by line. Tip my hat to our finance chair, Commissioner Gwen Markham, and the entire finance committee. If you just raise your hand so that everyone sees, that you're going to spend the time and do the work, ask the questions, and play our role as a fiduciary partner with the executive office. So a lot of work's been done, and even more work's about to begin, and we will complete and adopt an appropriation budget for the next fiscal year, as well as a 3-year triennial budget for the next few years, and look forward to working with the entire team. So, Executive, thank you very much for everything. Okay. Why don't we take a motion to receive and file the presentation that was just gone through? Commissioner Long, moved by Commissioner Long, seconded by Commissioner Rahman. Any discussion? All in favor of adopting, receiving and filing the presentation, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Let the record reflect that it's been received and filed unanimously. Next up is communications, and I will call on the clerk to read any communications that we might have.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first is from Wilma Cotton to the Honorable David Woodward, Chairperson, the Honorable Marcia Gershenson, Co-Chair, and Honorable Commissioners. I send this note to thank you sincerely for preparing and presenting me with the proclamation honoring my years on the Canvas Board. You made my day. I thoroughly enjoyed my time working with the employees of the Elections Office. Thank you again. Next one is dated June 27th, 2023. Dear Oakland County Board of Commissioners, on behalf of the children and staff at Oakland County Children's Village, I would like to thank you for your generous contribution. Words cannot adequately express our gratitude for the health products and towels donated to our youth residing at Children's Village. This is greatly appreciated. Your thoughtfulness and generosity reflect concern and support for the youth who spend time at Oakland County Children's Village and work so hard to achieve success in their treatment program and in their young lives. On behalf of the Oakland County Children's Village youth, their families, and staff, thank you again for your support. Your interest in our youth is very much appreciated and helps to let them know that people in the community care about them. It is always a pleasure for us to acknowledge the kindness of people like you. Sincerely, Heather Calcaterra, Manager, Oakland County Children's Village. And the final communication tonight is dated July 11th, 2023, to the Oakland County Board of Commissioners. Please accept this letter as notification that I have exercised the authority granted to the chair of the board to approve grant applications in excess of $50,000 for the purposes of meeting a submission deadline. Due to the grantor deadlines and the board's grant submissions process and calendar, it is not possible to submit the application for full board consideration in accordance with our normal procedures. I have authorized the submission of the following grant applications. The first one is the 2024 Victim Rights for the Prosecutor's Office in the amount of $799,521. The grant application deadline was June 29th, 2023. The second one, the 2023-2024 Child Nutrition Programs Coordinated Application for Children's Village in the amount of $220,000, and the deadline for that was June 30th, 2023. And the final grant application was for the fiscal year 2024 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistant Grant, Byrne JAG program for NET Sheriff, for the Sheriff's Office in the amount of $500,000. The grant application deadline, July 21st, 2023. Sincerely, David T. Woodward, Chair, Oakland County Board of Commissioners.
Can I get a motion to receive and file the communications? Moved by Commissioner Johnson, seconded by Commissioner Hoffman. And then some of those grants, high amounts, these are regular annual grants that we put in that just the timing and the deadline didn't correspond with the committees to review them. And so certainly when the grant is, if the grant is awarded as we expect it will be taken, accepted by an action of this board. Any further discussion on the communications? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Let the record reflect the communications are received unanimously. Thank you much. This will move us to the first public comment of tonight's meeting. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on any item on the regular agenda. That's the consent and regular agenda. We asked people to sign up. It didn't look like anyone signed up today. Is there anyone that would like to address us in public comment? Seeing none, I will close the first public comment. I'll move to reports of standing committees. First up is the consent agenda. Commissioner Hoffman.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Woodward. I'd like to take item 13 under public health and safety and put it on the regular agenda, please.
We adopted the amendment earlier, so Commissioner Hoffman moves to take its, if you refresh from what we did of the agenda that we adopted, it's item P under the public health and safety. This is the amendment number 1 to the law enforcement service agreement with the city of Pontiac. It's put on the regular agenda. Moved by Hoffman, seconded by Powell. Just to take it off the consent agenda, put it on the regular agenda. So any discussion? We generally allow commissioners to pull items off the the consent agenda. All in favor of making that adjustment to the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Let the record reflect that it's been moved. So it's item P, well, 13P, if you will, that will be moved on the regular agenda. And staff will do that, and by the time we get to it on the regular agenda, it'll magically be done on the board. But with that, Commissioner Hoffman moves the rest of the consent agenda, seconded by Commissioner Powell. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, will you please prompt the vote for the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, you have 16 yeas, 0 nays.
A sufficient number voting in the affirmative, the consent agenda is adopted, and that will move us to our regular agenda. Under Economic Development and Infrastructure Committee, there is none. Everything was taken up under the consent agenda. Under the Finance Committee, same. That will bring us to the Legislative Affairs and Government Operations Committee, and I will call on the Vice Chair, Commissioner Brendan Johnson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have 2 items. No? 1? There were 2? I might just have 1.
Yeah, I think it's just 1.
Just 1. Well, that's easier then. I just have 1 item today, folks. Today it is the Oakland County Land Bank Authority appointments. Chair, on behalf of the Legislative Affairs and Government Operations Committee, I move to recommend the adoption of the foregoing resolution.
Moved by Commissioner Johnson, seconded by Commissioner Hoffman. Is there any discussion about the Oakland County Land Bank Authority appointments? Commissioner Long.
I just have one question. I don't know where is the township official from? Do you know what community? Beverly Hills? Okay. Thank you.
So
No one
that would be
knows.
probably Southfield Township.
Southfield?
Oh, wait.
And county residents just at large, is that correct? Anywhere in the county that's at
Is this
large
the-
position? Or in that, there's probably another word, but
Correct,
you're saying
yes.
At large, okay, thank you.
Yes. Great. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please prompt the vote.
Mr. Chair, you have 16 yeas, 0 nays.
A sufficient number voting in the affirmative, the resolution is adopted. Commissioner Johnson.
Mr. Chair, that concludes the report of the Legislative Affairs and Government Operations Committee.
Thank you very much. That will move us on to Public Health and Safety Committee. Commissioner Lubes. Here you go.
Chair, we have 2 items. First item is creating.
Oh, wait, just 1 second. Wow. This board has really grown.
It's funny.
We're larger than legislators now. This is like a repeat.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's all right. Mr. Mike Keys will fix it.
Just because I noticed it, I'm like, each of them.
Yeah?
We're getting it fixed, but then we have their announcement opposed, so that's fine.
Okay.
It'll be announced by the chair.
Okay. It's being addressed, and the clerk will announce the accurate time with all of you only voting once.
Yeah, just in case, you know.
All right. So, but we adopted it. It was passed
Yeah, 16 to 0.
16 to 0. Okay. Sufficient number voting in the affirmative, as I said. Okay.
I did say 16 to 0.
Yeah, you did. Okay. Got it.
Disregard the screen.
Got it.
My
Okay.
voice.
Fantastic. All right. Okay, now we will come back to the chair of the Public Health and Safety Committee, and I will call on Commissioner Lubes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a few items tonight. The first being resolution to create an agreement template to place school resource officers in schools located in Oakland County.
Moved by Commissioner Powell, seconded by Commissioner Johnson. I will also, I'll do it afterwards, for those who want to be co-sponsors, etc. Any discussion? I believe there's some amendments. Commissioner Gingell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the, actually in the agreement under section 2.I, there's a language in there about charging the schools $1 per student to create a safer communities fund. And you know, I understand the mechanism here that we're trying to use to generate funds, dollars for those funds. But since this, to be honest with you, since this information came to us pretty quick, like today, and hadn't had a whole lot of time to think about the funding mechanism, my first amendment is that we just eliminate section 2.1 and allow us more time to figure out the mechanism that may be best overall to fund the Safer Communities Fund outside of what's proposed here. So first amendment is just to eliminate all the language in 2.1.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? Commissioner Spiz. Oh, moved by Commissioner Gingell, supported by Commissioner Spiz. Any discussion? Any further discussion? Commissioner Spiz.
I guess probably more on the bigger topic of this funding mechanism. And I believe it was discussed in your caucus, and some of the points in your caucus I agree with. So I know there's questions.
We can't. Sorry. Yeah.
I know there's questions out. I know there's questions about it. You know, we're going to charge public schools $1 per student, so we're going to take tax dollars that are already come from the state to put into this fund, so we can reassign that money somewhere else from schools. In many cases, that many argue don't have enough funding as it is today. So in general, to me, this doesn't make sense at all at this point and needs a lot more discussion. So I'm not sure why we're trying to rush this portion in. I'm open for the discussion and the debate, but as Commissioner Gingell said, we received this at 2 o'clock today. Let's have some real discussion about that and then move forward, and we can always add it later into the template, because we can always make changes to the template as we go forward. So I am in support of this amendment.
Thank you, Commissioner Spiz. I'll be voting no on this amendment. I support the creation of the Oakland County Safer Community Fund. I think it's difficult to have safe schools without safe communities, and I think that's something that we all care about. So I do not support striking it. Commissioner Long.
Is this amendment, well, it's not on his. I think I have to go back to the original. I'll wait.
Okay,
I'm
good.
gonna file
Thank you.
Robert's rules. I'm thinking about it myself. Okay.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion on the amendment, Madam Clerk, please prompt the vote.
Hoffman?
Oh,
I just have,
I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand, Commissioner Hoffman. Commissioner Hoffman. Before we vote, Commissioner Hoffman.
thank you. I do have a question, and Mike Spiz made me think about when he spoke. Is this even legal, that you can charge per student in a school district and take some of that tax money and then set up a fund and a committee to spend it? I'm not even sure.
These are voluntary agreements.
Pardon?
These are voluntary agreements.
It's voluntary?
These contracts are voluntary, yes. No one has to accept this contract. Yeah.
But if somebody wants to enter into a contract with the Oakland County Sheriff Department,
This is the framework of how that agreement will be
paying a
structured.
fee above and beyond the contract amount, just doesn't
Thank
seem
you.
to me that, I'm not sure it's legal. Should we?
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman.
Thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk, please prompt the vote. On the amendment.
On the amendment. On amendment number 1.
Right.
Mr. Chair, you have 6 yeas, 10 nays.
A sufficient number not voting in the affirmative, the amendment fails. I believe Commissioner Gingell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have a second amendment. Rather than striking all the language out, I understand that we want to put it in here as a mechanism to create this fund or funding for the fund that we will create. But I guess I have another thought, and it goes along the lines that Commissioner Hoffman was discussing. So the schools get money from the state on a per pupil basis to be staying within that school district to help them fund initiatives and other things. And in my mind, what this does is it takes the money that the school's earning on a per pupil basis, and it's not guaranteeing that that money's going to get spent in that exact school district. So the amendment that I'd like to propose adds on to the existing language, and it says the money raised from the specific school district will be allocated to that specific community. If the specific community chooses not to use the funds, then they may be spent in another community. So it gives the option for the school that's being charged the dollar to create the fund to take advantage of the dollar that they're being charged. And I think it's important because if you look at the rates that these schools are going to be paying, they're above and beyond our existing sheriff contract rates, which we could argue aren't funded, fully funded or not. These appear to be fully funded. So they're going to get a higher rate, and then they're going to get charged a per dollar per student. And for instance, at Lake Orion High School, that could be roughly $2,500. Why should Lake Orion High School put $2,500 in this fund without any assurance that they will get their money back to be used in their district? And I guess I'm struggling with some of it, again, with the timing of receiving it, but also having it tied to the Notre Dame prep contract, which everybody knows that we are in favor of supporting. This clause being put in the agreement, to me, has nothing to do with putting a deputy in a school, which is what we were pursuing. It kind of got, I would say, ticked and tied together in a way that creates this fund as a result of looking forward to driving a contract to put a officer in Notre Dame. So I'm hoping my fellow commissioners will consider this as a very reasonable request as an amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Moved by Commissioner Gingell, seconded by Commissioner Long. Any discussion? I will also be voting against the amendment. While I support the sentiment, I think there's also a recognition that school districts do not fit nicely in individual communities. Students come from across communities, school of choice, and a host of other things. This fund is about making communities safe for everyone in all schools. And I'm working in collaboration with the sheriff and others and members of this board to make sure those dollars are used appropriately. Commissioner Gershenson.
I just wanted to add that when we use special project money for the gun buyback, we offered it to every police department in the city, and only certain ones took us up on it. But this service was offered to everyone in Oakland County, no matter if it was the sheriff in Auburn Hills or Lake Orion, wherever they were. Any resident that wanted to participate was free to do that, and that's kind of how I envision this fund, that it will benefit the entire community. We're not going to be doing things, or it'll be up to the commission, to the group that decides what we're going to be doing. But it isn't going to be specific to a certain area. It's going to be sensible gun safety or safety issues or trainings that'll benefit the entire community. So I really don't see it as taxing and taking the individual school district's money. It's really to benefit all these projects are to benefit the entire community.
Thank you, Commissioner Gershenson. Commissioner Gingell for a second time.
Yeah, sorry, just one more time. And I think Commissioner Gershenson makes a good point, and I think that's the principle that I'm trying to wrap my head around. Haven't had a lot of time to think through it, but with the gun buyback, that was county funds that we put together. We didn't go to Auburn Hills and say, hey, give us $1 for every one of your residents and give us $1 for every one of your residents. We created a pot of money and made it available. What we're doing here is for the schools that opt to have a sheriff deputy in their school, which is their choice, we're saying to them, hey, pay us $1 for every one of your students to create this fund. And then what we're saying is, there's no guarantee I'm going to let you have your $1 back. I might take your $1, 50 cents of your $1, and I might use it in Ferndale, because I like to use Charlie as an example, who doesn't have a contract with the Oakland County Sheriff, who has not put 1 cent into the overall fund, but yet they're going to benefit from the dollars that Lake Orion put into the fund. This is like a distribution of the funding that you're charging for somebody that wants a sheriff's contract, which is incongruent and detached from the primary service that we're trying to contract for. This is my issue.
Thank you, Commissioner Gingell. Any further discussion? Commissioner Hoffman.
Thank you, Chairman Woodward. I just can't believe this is even legal, that you can charge a school district a fee per student, and they get their money from the state or local property taxes and take them. It's like a surcharge. If you enter into a contract with the Oakland County Sheriff Department for a school resource officer, guess what? We're going to charge you a little extra. If you don't want to do it, you don't get the service of the Sheriff Department.
These are
that's not right.
These are voluntary agreements.
It's what?
These are voluntary agreements. You don't have to enter into these contracts.
You don't have to, okay.
Yeah, that's the basis.
Wait, we talked about the importance of a school resource officer, and they don't have to enter into that, and they're paying for that officer. It's not like that we're doing it for free, but then on top of it, if you decide to enter this contract, we're gonna nick you for $1 a student up to $5,000. That can't even be legal, in my humble opinion.
Thank you, Commissioner. Oh, Commissioner Spiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was actually going to wait to make some of my comments to the next item, but I think everybody in this room knows that I feel every school in the state of Michigan should have an SRO. And I think this request and this fund is just wrong. Completely wrong, right? If we want to do what is right for all of our students in the state, in this country, we should. We take taxpayer dollars every day. Let's set aside some of those taxpayer dollars and create something or a program to do that. Just like we did with the gun buyback program. We took it out of the general fund. We took it out of special projects. That's what the damn program is for special projects. Let's use it the right way. To me, this is completely wrong. Why put it in a contract? It makes no sense to me.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, without any further discussion, Madam Clerk, please prompt the vote. On the amendment.
On Amendment 2.
On amendment number 2.
Wait, hang on. Sorry, come vote now. Amendment 2. Powell. Lose. Have you voted?
I did it once, I did not.
Okay, yes. Mr. Chair, you have 6 yeas, 10 nays.
Thank you very much. Insufficient number of members voting in support, the amendment fails. Now we're on to the main motion. Commissioner Long.
Yes, I followed Robert Rules of Order. I'm going on to the original amendment now.
Resolution.
And resolution. And so did we, even though this is voluntary, as you're saying with the school liaisons, is corporate counsel, is this legal? Did we get an opinion from corporate counsel or?
The development of this framework was done in concert with Corporation Counsel, Risk Management, the Sheriff's Office, and working with the Executive Office.
So it was worked on, Corporation Counsel has seen this?
Yes.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Commissioner Hoffman.
Thank you. So what you're saying is corporate counsel said this is legal? Is that what you're saying?
This was prepared in conjunction with Corporation Counsel.
I want to know if it's legal. I'd like
I believe it's legal, yes.
asking if it's legal or not legal. I can't see how it can even pass the
Yes.
smell test.
All right.
So
Thank
it's
you, Commissioner
legal?
Hoffman.
They said it
I
was
believe it is legal, yes.
I'm sorry to hear.
Yeah.
They
Yes,
said
I
it's
believe it is legal. Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a public school educator for over 18 years, I strongly believe there are more valuable ways that are evidence-based and empirically supported to utilize money and resources and education to support safer schools and learning environments for all students and educators. Police are not the answer to school shootings. The answer is gun control. Placing sheriff deputies in schools is an easy way out of a difficult conversation, but a very necessary conversation. I support the goal of ensuring safe schools, but I also know and believe that there are better ways of achieving this goal. Knowing that this policy is not written in stone and ultimately it is an optional agreement, I'm willing to move forward supporting this item, but I also look forward to more conversations in regards to creating and ensuring safe schools and safe learning environments for all students.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I speak today in support of this resolution to create a template for placing school resource officers in schools in Oakland County. This resolution has been a long time coming and in the works for many months, and I'm excited about this final product. I think it speaks to the serious deliberations that have produced it. You see, Mr. Chair, despite what some of us would be told to believe, the concept of placing an SRO at specifically the school in question today is not hardly as simple as signing a facsimile of a memorandum of understanding a decade old. Instead, it wrestles with concepts at the very core of our republic. Let me be clear. The designated and explicitly separated use of public monies to support extraordinary services for a private entity is wholly inconsistent with democracy and equal protections under the law. Should we not be very careful, we are treading lightly but surely into the direction of enabling cronyism in our county. Public services, even if only the physical embodiment of state power vis-a-vis a functionary of the law being physically present, ought indeed benefit society as a whole and fosters little good when cloistered behind the wrought iron gates of a private school. Indeed, should taxpayer money be disproportionately allocated to benefit specific private individuals or groups, it could likely exacerbate social divisions and challenge the principle of equality that is crucial to the stability of our democracy. Since the school in question tonight in this resolution is a Catholic school, I think it might be also worth mentioning that extraordinary distribution of funds is also antagonistic to Catholic social teaching. In his 1991 encyclical, Pope St. John Paul II wrote in Centesimus Annus, quote, "The more fortunate should renounce some of their rights so as to place their goods more generously at the service of others." In his 2013 encyclical, Evangelii Gaudium, Pope Francis writes, "Just as the commandment, thou shalt not kill, sets a clear limit in order to safeguard the value of human rights, today, we also have to say, thou shalt not to an economy of exclusion and inequality, such an economy kills." Were these normal times, I might urge in the strongest terms that we oppose the consideration of such a moral hazard. However, these are not normal times. Mr. Chair, the framers of our Constitution could not have envisioned a world in which we live in today. A single common firearm today could effectively obliterate an entire battalion of the King's Army in 1785. This body is not fool. And as a member of the mass shooting generation myself, I am painfully keen to the psychological toll of knowing that nowhere is safe, no place is sacred, and every breath that I take could very well be my last. I have done more mass shooting drills than I have earthquake, flood, and bomb combined. I have been in the stampedes of my fellow Americans, spooked by an umbrella that looked a little too gun-like. I have lost friends to gun violence and walked the halls of too many now crime scenes. I support this resolution because if it saves even one life, it will have been worth it. In doing so, we do not say that we believe that this process is good, nor that hardening our schools is better than eliminating our society's firearm glut. In fact, part of what makes this resolution so strong is that it works within our community to eliminate that very glut. By establishing the Oakland County Safer Communities Fund today and using some of that money, we will earn from these contracts so we can feed two birds with one hand by both working to mitigate the effects of our gun safety crisis and diminish the threat level that feeds that very crisis. Last year alone, before I joined this board and through the actions of the board, over 350 firearms, including 5 assault rifles, were taken off our streets by county-sponsored gun buybacks. This fund will help that work and continue to lower the risk of another tragedy striking within our county. Now, I've been very honest about my personal affiliations with the school in question. While this issue between Notre Dame Preparatory and the board predates my time in elected service to the board, it has been a particular interest of mine since my joining, since I am an alumnus of that school. When I was a student there, we all learned the school's mission statement sincerely and were made to recite it often. It is to work with God to form Christian people, upright citizens, and academic scholars. Mr. Chair, I'd like to think that I've lived up to that mission, and in the spirit of upright citizenry, I feel it is regrettably incumbent on me to provide an apology to my colleagues on behalf of that school community. The way many parents of the community have acted throughout this entire endeavor has been fully lacking in grace and utterly unbecoming of this mission. The behavior of select parents from the NDPMA community has been incredibly embarrassing for me to be associated with. I urge the school administration, the board, and Marist fathers to critically examine the character in which this process has been undertaken and honestly address the parents that have frankly made a hobby of bullying their local public servants. Mr. Chair, the resolution before us is imperfect, but it is good, and we cannot let perfection be the enemy of good. It's of utmost importance that we pass it today and provide a consistent and transparent policy moving forward, safeguarding against corruption, maintaining equality under the law, and protecting young Michiganders. That's what this is about. I urge a yes vote.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gingell.
Thank you. I just want to recognize Commissioner's speech. I thought it was very good. I want to come back to the agreement. I don't think anybody here disagrees that we should be putting an agreement in place that allows a school district to license directly with the Oakland County Sheriff. So we're with you. What I don't like is 2I, which says if you want to have a contracted sheriff's office, you have to pay into this fund, right? It's tie-barred. There is no option. It's either A or B. And yes, it's a voluntary contract, but it's only voluntary if you don't want the service of the Oakland County Sheriff Office in your school. If we want to fund the Safe Community Fund, why don't we take money out of the general fund? Put it in there. Don't hold the schools up. That's what we did with the gun buyback that everybody references. We didn't go around and charge people to create a fund. Don't charge the schools. Other than that, I think it's a great contract. I just don't think it's fair. I don't think it's prudent. I don't think it's equitable. We all talk about equity. So the only schools that are going to pay into this fund are the schools using the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. Why shouldn't the schools pay into the fund, get the money back? Isn't that equitable? And for the commissioners that have the Oakland County Sheriff, I think the Commissioner in Rochester, you're telling me you're fine with letting all your students pay this dollar in the fund with no oversight per se of where that money's going to go. 100% of it could go to Berkeley. I'm not good with that representing my community. That's the issue.
Thank you, Commissioner Gingell. Any further discussion? Commissioner Markham.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to, I keep hearing people say, we all think that there should be resource officers in the schools. I don't believe that. I am not an advocate for resource officers in the schools for a lot of reasons. But I'm going to vote for this because I think it is a good first step. It is what the schools think they want. And so I am going to vote in favor of it, but there are parts of it that I don't like either. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cavell.
Just real quick, I want to echo what Gwen said. That's exactly.
Turn on your mic, please. All right, then speak into it.
I just want to echo what Commissioner Markham said. I feel like what you're saying speaks to my heart. Appreciate you, Gwen. That's exactly how I feel. And also, Commissioner Gingell, this fund would also allow for leveraging of dollars. So yes, I'd be more than happy to work with you and earn your support for another gun buyback, which we can talk about after this meeting. But this also leverages money.
I would love to work with you and eliminate charging the schools that want officers and use general fund dollars to fund your fund. I'll give you 5 times the amount.
It's not a conversation. Let's come back. Seeing no further discussion. Oh, sorry. Commissioner Powell.
I just wanted to say I am in support of this. I've been in school districts that, for my own sake, in the district where we had SROs, I have my own reasoning as to why. I've been in the trenches of schools that have a lot of the issues. We all know Pontiac is a problematic district for us, and I am going to continue to support SROs in our school. The only thing that I am also in support of is training, proper training, because it does matter the type of SROs that work in the schools. And I just thank God that over the years, Pontiac has had good SROs from when we were Pontiac Police Department to now we're the Sheriff Department. So I just want to say thank you. So I am a vote for this, and I am the representation of Notre Dame. So, and I want to thank all my colleagues. If this passed, thank you, because we all know this has been something that has been pressing for us to take care of. So thank you.
Right. Okay. And I just want to, like, this resolution is the general template. There's another, vote specifically on the Notre Dame, basically the same thing, inserting the word Notre Dame into that contract. Okay. For a second time and final time, Commissioner Hoffman.
Third time.
Third time. All right, never mind.
Okay.
Commissioner Hoffman.
We're getting confused about what we all support. We all support school resource officers. That's not even a debate. That's not even a question. Okay, maybe you don't.
Okay, Commissioner.
I would think
Commissioner
majority
Hoffman.
of the
Address
people-
me. Make your point.
Okay.
For the
I think the
fourth
majority of the
time.
I think the majority of the people here support a school resource officer. But we're conflating that with, if you want to enter into a contract with me for something I do in my business, fine. I have what you want, but you got to pay me a kicker. And that's exactly what they're doing. I can't believe that's legal.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman.
Okay.
Seeing no
thank you.
further discussion, Madam Clerk, please prompt the vote. So we are voting on the main motion, the creating of the agreement, the template to place school resource officers in schools located in Oakland County.
It's not working. Commissioner Nelson?
Say, you just vote.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, you have 10 yeas, 6 nays.
A sufficient number voting in the affirmative, the resolution is adopted. Now we'll move to the next item, Commissioner Lubes.
Next item is establishing an Oakland County Safer Community Fund.
Moved by Commissioner Lubes, seconded by Commissioner Gershenson. Any discussion? I think we've talked about it at length. Seeing,
Chairman, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Can I just?
Commissioner Nelson, yes.
Clarification on, and I know we talked extensively, about this fund.
Mhm.
The one thing I just wanted to get clarification on. So the further results clause, so the very first one.
Mm-hmm.
Can you help me understand helping improve access for additional school resource officers in Oakland County? And I'm specifically asking that because one of the conversations that we had prior to this board meeting in caucus was talking about that equitable aspect of how do we make sure that all schools who need, want, and benefit from having a school resource officer, would we be able to assist them in funding a school resource officer? This language confuses me because it goes against what I thought I understood in caucus.
So I can attempt to, so to the extent to help support that, leverage additional dollars maybe, this fund is not going to have enough money to underwrite SRO officers in a structural way, unless there's additional resources that come into it. So while there is no restriction on it, as we discussed in caucus, if there's a concern of a school district that has the inability, just financially does not have the dollars to do it, that we probably should adopt a uniform policy for when that condition is identified and have a bigger pot of resources to be able to address it. But this is not prohibited from being used to help support that. It's not going to be enough money.
So the purpose really is not for that, but if I'm hearing what you're saying, it could potentially be utilized?
It could, because these would be dollars that would be in a fund that would be authorized with by a resolution to be appropriated. It's just not enough money to do the full job. And what we discussed in caucus, that instead of committing resources to an ongoing annual expense, that it's probably better to have a different source of fund identified to do that with a criteria. But these dollars, if the board authorized, could use these dollars. It just wouldn't be enough to actually do it.
I see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Long, followed by Commissioner Joliet.
All right, I'll try to be quick. Now, I think I asked this in finance. Is this fund, this is going to start with $1 from those communities, correct? Because there's some confusion over here. Start
Yes.
with $1 from the communities from the item that we just voted on.
Yes.
$1 per student, up to 5,000.
Yes.
That's going to be the seed money to begin this program.
Yes.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Going forward, not going backwards, going forward. Commissioner Joliet.
Thank you. Not to belabor this point, but I think that we all agree that we want to make Oakland County have safer communities. I think we can all agree on that. I don't feel that creating this fund is the way to accomplish that goal. So therefore, I cannot support this resolution.
Okay. Commissioner Gingell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to build on Commissioner Joliet's comments because I actually support having the fund. I don't support the way we're proposing funding it. I would love to have an amendment that says we put in $5 million or $200,000, which is going to be way more than what you're going to get from $1 per student in Lake Orion. And the second concern is the conversation that just happened. We haven't even voted on this, and now all of a sudden we're talking about, well, hey, wait, could we take the money in this fund that we charged Lake Orion High School because they could afford a sheriff's office at a higher rate and turn around and use that money to put a sheriff's deputy in a school that can't afford it? I'm for helping schools that can't afford it. I'm not for my community taking their dollars and paying for it. Let's utilize our special projects fund. Let's utilize some other fund. That seems much more reasonable to me. I just can't support the funding mechanism of the fund. I'm not against the principle of the fund.
Thank you. Commissioner Spiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to reiterate, I am totally against this. Totally. I sit, and as most of you know, I sit on the prosecutor's gun violence committee, as does Commissioner Cavell. Nowhere in any of the discussions we had over the last 8-10 months has anybody talked about taking money from schools to support a program like this. Nowhere. It makes no sense to me.
We've talked about it in the Health and Equity Subcommittee. So, yeah.
Like,
I know you're not.
this is not a conversation between all of you.
Again, it makes no sense to me. I agree with 100% with Commissioner Gingell. If we're going to fund it, let's fund it, right? Let's not pull money from this school, this school, and put it into this fund when they're already strapped to a point. I know it's only $1 per student, and I mean, in the big scheme of things, and how much money they get, it's probably small, but it's just not right.
Thank you.
It doesn't make sense in any way.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion on the resolution, Madam Clerk, please prompt the vote.
Commissioner Weibert? Mr. Chair, you have 10 yeas, 6 nays.
A sufficient number voting in the affirmative, the resolution is adopted. Commissioner Lubes.
Our next item is looking at an interlocal agreement with Notre Dame Preparatory School and Harrison Academy for 2023-2024 law enforcement services.
Who wants to move that? Moved by, oh my goodness. Okay. Okay. Commissioner, moved by Commissioner Powell, seconded by Commissioner Joliet. Any discussion? Commissioner Spiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to commend the chair for doing what he said he would do and get it done by today's meeting. So thank you very much for putting this on the agenda, getting things done. A lot more things in here than what I expected, but the main point right now was to get this contract.
Yes. And I appreciate,
so thank you very much.
Hey, Commissioner Spiz, I appreciate the acknowledgement, but this truly, Corporation Counsel has invested a tremendous amount of time in this, risk management, the Sheriff's Office, county staff, county commission staff, the executive and everything. It was, I mean, with a lot of other challenges, and not to mention the holidays and other things, to get us to a product that we can move forward.
And I just wanted to remind commissioners that everyone was getting the letters. We all knew we were working on this. We gave this July 20th deadline to parents. And so for those of you that say you're just seeing this for the first time, I want to remind you that you can reach out to leadership that has been working on this for months and get an update. We're all pretty available and happy to share whatever we know with everybody. So you just be reminded that although you may not be on the committee, that something's working, that an issue's being worked on, that you can reach out and communicate.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Cavell, and followed by Commissioner Gingell. Commissioner Cavell.
Well, I just want to say plaudits to everyone that was mentioned, but also Brendan for really coming in the hot seat and handling it well.
Thank you, Commissioner Cavell. Commissioner Gingell.
Yeah, I just want to address Commissioner Gershenson. I think we all knew we were working on a contract, working on the stipulations of being able to support private entities. What I wasn't aware of is the ransom that the schools now have to pay to be able to enter a contract. Never heard of it, never seen it till about 2 o'clock today. And it tie bars somebody to have to pay in a fund that they may or may not get any benefit from. I think that's wrong, and I think it's really inexcusable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further discussion, Madam Clerk, please prompt the votes on the contract with Notre Dame.
Mr. Chair, you have 16 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay. A sufficient number, a unanimous vote, the resolution passes. Commissioner Lubes.
Our last item is an amendment to the 2022-24 law enforcement services agreement with the city of Pontiac.
Moved by Commissioner Powell, seconded by Commissioner Nelson. Any discussion? Commissioner Hoffman.
Thank you. I'm opposed to this because what this does, it creates a major position that they tweak the description a little bit, but the duties are not the same as the other majors in the Oakland County Sheriff Department. So this is sending the wrong message to those other majors that they can take someone out of this who is a captain, create this other position, tweak the description a little bit, and they're not doing the same duties as the existing majors. And what does that also say to the existing captains that are still there? Should they all raise their hand and want to become a major with some special description? I just think it's wrong. I don't think we should be involved in that. I just think we're sending the wrong message.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman. Commissioner Powell, followed by Commissioner Cavell.
From my understanding, there has been things that has been unfair with that union over time. And at this point, if the city council and the mayor of that city voted yes and is willing to pay for it, and Sheriff Bouchard did, or for the original contract before they had to go back and revisit everything, had already approved it, I don't understand why we got a problem with it. So I'm gonna leave that on there. I think Captain Ewing is well deserving of such a adjustment, change, whatever the case may be, of what they all agreed upon and negotiated. He has did his time, born and raised from that city, and has committed numerous hours in just being a great captain. And all I'm saying is we're injecting ourselves in a union discussion that our own sheriff had approved everything, our council and the mayor of the city of Pontiac approved everything, and then the union came back with some concerns. I think that's crazy, because they should have went through that before it even came back to us. So if the union had any issues, they should have took that up with the city mayor and the city council before they approved any of this changing for their community with this position. So I hear the ranking, I did research about that, and there has been other things done in the past, and I'm gonna just leave it there. So I think that I wanna encourage all my commissioners that because the city council and the mayor voted this, why are we even stopping it? And they're paying for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cavell, followed by Commissioner Hoffman, then Commissioner Long. Oh, gotcha. Commissioner Long, then Hoffman for a second time. Commissioner Cavell.
I just want to say with this, there will be 109 sheriff's officers patrolling Pontiac. So at most places, those are called chiefs, for good or bad. So I just think that's worth mentioning.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Long, followed by Commissioner Hoffman for a second time.
Commissioner Powell, they're told the name. I was at a meeting last week, and it's kind of funny that you said, never vote for the raise for the name of the person, it's the position. And they were arguing for 2 hours about that. And then you said his name, I'm like, uh-oh, here we go. But it's about the position. They said, never the person doing the extra. You have to be ready to offer that to anyone at that position, not the person. But that's not saying I'm not voting for it. But, they argued 2 hours at White Lake about that. So, thank you.
Well, we have time. All right, so Commissioner Weipert for a first time, then Commissioner Hoffman for a second time.
This is just a contract for position, so it's not gender specific, so.
This is a voluntary contract that the city of Pontiac is entering into. Correct. For additional positions and a reclassification of a captain to a major. Commissioner Hoffman.
I really just want to make it clear that this is not about the person in any of these positions. I don't know the person. I'm just saying I don't think this is good governance. When you create these positions, tweak it a little bit, and now there's other majors there that are going to say, what the heck? I'm doing this work. This is still the work of a captain. What are the other captains going to say? Raise my hand and I want the same courtesy, I guess? I don't think it's good. Thank you. It's not the person.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, Madam Clerk, please prompt the vote. Oh, Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 1 nay.
Sufficient number voted in the affirmative. The resolution is adopted. Commissioner Loops.
Mr. Chair, there are no further items from the Public Health and Safety Committee this evening.
Thank you very much. All right, that concludes all the items. Where's the rest of my agenda? That will move us next to new and miscellaneous business. Are these resolutions to be introduced?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So who's up first? Commissioner Brendan Johnson?
Thank you. This is my first time doing this. Do I just read it in by
Just
title?
just the title of this. Introduce and refer to the respective committee.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to introduce sponsorship of the postponement of 2023 Rochester Hills Festival of the Hills Fireworks Show.
And refer to economic development or finance. Finance. Refer to finance without objection. Next up, Commissioner Cavell.
I'd like to introduce the supporting of the creation of the Ferndale Business Association and refer to finance.
Referred without objection. Commissioner Powell.
Yes, Chair. I'd like to report to finance. Sponsorship of the Pontiac Youth Assistance After School and Summer Activities. And the second item is also to refer to finance is a sponsorship of Pontiac Regional Chamber Youth Internship and Engineering Program.
Both referred without objection. That's all I have. Anything else? I don't think so. I'll move us to announcements. Any announcements?
Let me
Pardon? Oh, yeah, yes, go ahead. Madam Clerk, yep.
Okay. Just a final reminder in case anybody missed me saying it earlier, today was close of books. Your CFR is due July 25th by 5 p.m. unless you have a waiver.
Thank you very much. Any further announcements? Seeing none, this will open up our second public comment of tonight's meeting. This is an opportunity to speak on any topic that wasn't on or off the agenda. Is there anyone who would like to speak and address the Board of Commissioners? No. Seeing none, I will close the second public comment. And we will, I stay adjourned till July 27th, 2023. We're going to need to call us. That's Thursday. It'll be an AM meeting. This is a little bit of trend. I mean, this is a meeting that we need to do to take action on the downtown Pontiac property as the clock is ticking. So 9 a.m. Yep. Yep. And more information is coming. But
Can we make it 8:30?
People, by show of hands, who prefers 8:30 to get it done sooner? I need to see more hands go. Okay, 8:30. Look at that. All right, we'll move the meeting to 8:30. Come on. It's like, yes.
That is the same day as the Oxford case, and I believe they have this room reserved for nowhere. Oh.
So I have been in contact with the prosecutor's office. This originally for spillover. This is a Board of Commissioners. We have to take care of it. I mean, from the clock, but we are making accommodations. Anyone who's coming to observe the proceedings on site, we are making accommodations so that they can. There is no one confirmed that anyone will even be here, but if they will, we have committee room. We have committee rooms and other things that we will make available for all of it to be streamed. So anyone who wants to come to the county complex to have the hearing streamed, we will make extraordinary commitments to do that. Depending on the timeline, I expect a fairly short meeting, and the space could be available as well. Yep. We're going to do 8:30. Huh? We can keep talking. Decide what breakfast you're bringing, and then we can. All right. Thank you, everyone. We stand adjourned.